Morning, people. How are we all today? I hope you're well. A whole slew of nonsense in the papers today, folks, and I mean a whole slew of nonsense. The first two or three rags go on absolutely untrue figures, and I'll explain why they're untrue figures when we get into it. But there is absolute nonsense. Yesterday was a slew of figures come out by the Scottish Government, and the press, of course, have cherry-picked the bits that they think aren't going well to make a story of. But to be fair, except for one of the stories, it's been quite successful, the Scottish Government's tenure in government. And when we get into the first story, which is an absolute lie, I'll break it down to you why it's a lie. And the BBC got slown yesterday because they got an expert for a top charity that's involved in this sector to come on, and they thought they were going to get that person to slate the particular area that we're about to talk about. And she went on to praise the Scottish Government and say that England has only just started mandatory introducing of what's been going on here in Scotland for years. So let's get into it, shall we? It's Andy Truck Davy out the truck and at home in his office in Salmon, North Lanarkshire, where it's overcast but dry, 15 degrees, reasonably warm. The pollen count is extremely high today, folks. So get your antihistamines taken if you've got hay fever like me. Okay, so it's the 25th of the 6th, 2025. And first up this morning, we have the Daily Fail. We'll put it up for you, if we can find the fucking thing. No, other end of the page, David. Middle of the page, David. No. Try again. What have I done with the Daily Fail this morning, folks? I do know I have it. Just give me a wee second to find the fucking thing. Here we go. Let's get it up. Okay. NHS cancer care crisis. Sorry, but I'm off to Japan. Health Minister is 5,700 miles away, and waiting times hit worst level on record. Folks, that's an absolute lie. And the expert that they got on yesterday in the BBC to berate the Scottish Government on this one pointed out that actually when the Scottish Government came to office, there was no mandatory testing at 50 for bowel cancer and other forms of cancer, and the timely testing was at 44% when the Scottish Government took over the Scottish NHS. But today, timely testing is at 67%. So over 18 years, there's been a 23% increase in timely testing for all sorts of cancers. Now, that's not good enough. Only one NHS board in the whole of Scotland made the government's target of timely testing of people who are suspected of having cancer at 95%, and that was NHS Lanarkshire. But you will all have heard me telling you that I don't know where they get these numbers and these figures for the NHS, because the fucking Lanarkshire NHS, it just runs like clockwork. It runs like a sweetie. Never had any problems with it. None. Want to see a doctor, phone the doctor. Get a phone call back. If the doctor thinks that you need to go in, it's the same day or the next fucking day. No messing about here. But what this story about testing tells us, by the way, this isn't about cancer care. That is a fucking lie. Everybody who's diagnosed with cancer in Scotland gets seen within the 12-week period and starts treatment almost immediately. This is about people getting tested. That's down to doctors deciding whether they think you need a cancer test or no. They might go through three or four other things they think might be wrong with you before you get to cancer tests. But 67% of the population who are thought to have cancer getting their test timely isn't brilliant, but it isn't bad, and it's 23% better than when the SNP came to fucking government. But that sort of nonsense is not on NHS cancer care crisis. There isn't a cancer care crisis. The figures are about testing. And the NHS boards that are testing people timely. Well, you know, the NHS boards can only test people who are put in fucking front of them. Simple as that. So we'll take that false story down. And we'll move on to the next fucking false story. This time it's the Scotsman. And it runs on the same fucking nonsense. Appalling cancer wait times show the worst level recorded. Third of patients with urgent referrals were not treated within 62 days. Let me correct that. Were not tested within 62 days. And it was less than the third of people. It was 23%. But this is the fucking sort of nonsense that passes for news here in Scotland. An untrue fucking story. And that's no unusual in our press. When the SNP government came to power, timely testing for cancer was at 44%. Since they came to power, they've introduced a mandatory bowel cancer test for all people at 50. And they're looking at taking that down. But they're looking at healthcare services around the world. Where do you think Mr. fucking Gray's off to Japan today? He's not going, there's fucking holly bags of doubt. Anyway, I say this stuff's nonsense. Absolute nonsense, folks. You can look the figures up yourselves. When the SNP came to power, only 44% of people put forward for cancer tests were treated on time. Fast forward 18 years, and 67% of people presented for cancer tests are tested timely. Is it good enough? No. Is it better when the last shower of shite were in power? The Labour and the Lib Dems? Aye. And if you all remember right, folks, that's the Labour Party and Lib Dems that gave Westminster back 1.5 billion of the Scottish budget and says they couldn't find fuck all to spend it on. Well, the whole 8 years of the first two terms of Parliament, the Labour Party built one fucking house, but they couldn't think of anything to spend 1.5 billion quid on. So sent it back to the fucking Treasury. Wow. You see, these narratives are false, folks. You have to take the long-term view. And I mean the long-term view. And the reason why we're talking about cancer test waiting times is because all the rest of the waiting times have improved. They have improved. So cancer waiting times for testing was the only thing they could find in the figures to fucking mump about. And that gets more interesting as we go on and on. Right, let's get rid of the Scotsman. Next up we have the Herald. What's the Herald got for us today? Find the fucking thing. That one's going to tell me where it is. It appears I don't have the Herald, so I'll tell you what it's got. The Salmon inquiry. Apparently there's a police probe into a civil servant, a senior civil servant, at the heart of the Salmon inquiry. Now I've got no idea what that's about. I thought it'd been put to fucking bed But apparently Kenny McCaskill has decided he's going to keep it up. So there's a police probe into the evidence given by a civil servant in the Alex Salmon inquiry. So we'll see where that goes. Okay, next up we have the scum. And I don't put the scum up, but it has, as MSPs clock off for 10 weeks, cancer rates are worst ever. Now they'll know it's weights for testing, and it's actually a 23% improvement when the SNP came to government. Sex offences rocketed? Nope, are also incorrect. Reported sex offences are up. It's the only figure in the crimes figures that are up, actually. And that's because since the SNP came to government, women now have the confidence to come forward and say they've been sexually assaulted. Whereas before the SNP came to power, women had no trust in the fucking justice system. So they didn't report being sexually assaulted. Sexual assault's normally one of the one-on-one crimes where there's very little there's very little evidence and no witnesses. It's your word against the person's word that you claim has sexually offended you. Unless, of course, the person who sexually offended you has left some sort of DNA evidence on you. But, as I say, the reason why reported sex crimes is up is because women now have the confidence to report sex crimes. And have a hope of getting justice, even though that the chances of getting justice are fucking low. In fact, if you take the UK as a whole, only 5% of rape cases are prosecuted. 5% of reported rape cases are prosecuted. That's fucking nuts. But at least here in Scotland, we're reversing the trend. Women are now confident enough to go and report sexual offences. And home building drops to new low. What a state, says Sarwar. This is the guy whose party last in office could only see 44% of people presented for cancer tests on time. These are the people who presided over the government where women didn't have the confidence to come forward and report sexual offences. And when it comes to home building at a new low, well, to be fair, nobody's got any fucking money to buy a house. And as for home building at new low, no, it's no. I've just explained to you that in 8 years in the administration in Holyrood, Labour built one fucking house. One! I would say it's hard to get much lower than that unless you have fucking zero. When we talk about nonsense in the press, folks, this is what we mean by nonsense in the press. Cancer test waits time down. Improved. Confidence to report crime up. And home building. Well, home building is based on economic factors. And the economic factor here is no fucker can afford to buy a house. And if I'm a developer, I'm not building something I can't fucking sell. Right, Kate, you're right. You do have to look at historic numbers to get context. And the quality reporting in our press is dreadful. As I say, kudos to the wee woman on the BBC yesterday. Can't remember what it was. A bowel cancer charity UK. And the BBC had her own to slate these waiting times, and she fucking slated the BBC. Did you know that mandatory testing for bowel cancer was only introduced in England this year? This year! This fucking year. It was introduced in Scotland about 15 fucking years ago. You see, a wee woman fucking ripped the BBC a new one. All very politely done too. It was lovely. Right, let's get up. As I say, but for Sarwar to say anything, you know, the man whose party left office, as I say, with cancer testing waiting times at an all-time high. It confidence in the police to be able to report a crime at the all-time low. And they didn't build any fucking houses at all. And these are the headlines in the Scum. These are the headlines in the Scum. By the way, the young and the gullible will pick that shit up and believe it. Those of us who have been around since the very first day of devolution have a timeline and a record of what was going on back then in our heads. Most of the audience here, we've been here. We've been here since the inception of devolution. A hell of a lot is campaigned for devolution. Well, actually, we didn't think it was devolution. We thought we were getting home rule. Devolution was the term that came up after that. Right, let's move on. Next up, we've Express. What's the fucking loony rag the Express got for us today? No idea what that one is. Right, here we go, the Express. I'll put it up. Now, what's it got for us? Okay, government's chilling national security warning that conflict is coming. Britain must get ready for direct attacks as threat rises. Attack for who? Who the fuck is Little Britain going to fight? We've no armed forces. We're skint. We couldn't afford a military campaign. And our young are no interested in getting into wars. They're no. This is nonsense. Fucking nonsense. Britain doesn't need to get ready for fucking war. We've got nobody to fight. It gets worse as it goes on. But even if we did have somebody to fight, we don't have the military capacity to fucking fight. Fuck's sake. The nonsense in the papers fucking drive you in the twist. So it would. Right, what's after the Express? The Times. What's the Times got for us today? Let's have a look. Should be easy to find now, actually. The Times. UK to match China and Russia with nuclear jets. And this, folks, is the news that Sir Keir Warmonger, children starver, granny freezer, and batterer of the disabled is going to buy American jets that can carry nuclear bombs. He is expanding the UK's nuclear deterrent. And all the while, trying to shove 250,000 disabled people into poverty, having in his first year in government put 250,000 children into poverty, and in the first year of government throws an extra 10 or 12,000 pensioners to fucking death over the winter. And we'll get Rachel Reeves going to war with her own MPs saying that these cuts must be made because we need to buy more nuclear bombs, apparently. Apparently we need a nuclear deterrent in the air and the sea. Wonder how many billion it's going to cost for these bits of metal junk to lie about and deteriorate. Because that's what's happening out at Coalport. Where there's 266 nuclear warheads doing fuck all. Except for polluting the land. Nonsense, right? Let's get that down and get the Telegraph up. Right, the Telegraph. What sort of nonsense that got for us today? Well, the very same nonsense we got in the last one. British jets to carry our nuclear warheads. Sir Keir Starmer is going to spend money that could be spent on bringing people out of poverty on the instruments of war. He is going to spend that on the instruments of war. Instruments of war which will never ever be used and could never be used. Because it would be the end of the human race. These are called weapons of mass destruction. They're called weapons of mass extinction. Because mutual extinction is what happens when you press that fucking button. Once the enemy's got notice in the air, whether it be a missile or whether it be a jet, they're not waiting, they're retaliating. So it would be a mutual extinction event. Fucking idiots. But there you go, folks. As Starmer has pushed 500,000 people into poverty since he came to fucking power, he's going to take the money that he took out those people's starving fucking mouths and spend it on American fucking war machines. Wrong guy, wrong job, wrong time. But you were told before the English were told before they voted for him, and the Scots voted for him this time and all. Let's hope we're all learning. So as this spanner shoves people into poverty, he's spending it on weapons. And at the NATO conference yesterday, he promised to increase military spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. 5 fucking percent. At the rate GDP is shrinking, it'll still be the same amount of money we're spending today. And you're right, class action, no politician would dare to fire nuclear weapons. That's why it's a waste of fucking money. And where we know that Mr. Starmer in his first year pushed 250,000 milk children into poverty by refusing to lift the 2-child cap on benefits, this is what he's doing with the money, folks. He's waving his willy on the international stage, trying to look like an international statesman, when what he actually is a fucking lying charlatan who makes Donald Trump look like a fucking muppet. Right, yeah, see that I'm doing. What's after the Telegraph? The Guardian. We'll find that for up a second. So, man, there's some real nonsense in the papers today, folks, and I mean nonsense. Don't have the Guardian, so what's it got? The Guardian tells us that while 5 million children in poverty, 6 million adults in poverty, that includes pensioners, so 11 million people in the population are living in relative poverty. And what the Guardian tells us, Starmer's going to cut the safety net and buy B-52 bombers. Wrong man, wrong job. The headline, Starmer to buy nuclear jets. Fucking mental. And I mean mental. You're right, Harry. Starmer did say when asked if he would press the nuclear button, he said aye. I remember getting off my head about it at the time, saying this is the wrong guy, the wrong job, wrong party actually. But the Labour Party is now red Tory. Tony Blair started that transformation, and Kid Starmer has brought it to its conclusion. They are now completely a state actor, owned completely by the state, the same way the Tory party are owned by the state. The question is, what fucking state? At this point in time, it looks like Israeli state, and the US state. Right, so that was the Guardian. What's the National vote for today? Let's see what the Nationals vote today. Because I know what they have the National. The National has pressure on for Sarwar as 10 of his MPs join rebellion on disability benefit cuts. I guess he's being pressurised by Starmer and Reeves to try and convince these 10's minds. And Robertson leaves door open to US warplanes landing at Prestwick to refuel. He doesn't have any fucking choice. Although the airport is owned by the Scottish Government, if the UK say the US can land planes there, there's fuck all we can dare say about it. An activist rejects Cooper's protest panic claim. And that's this fella here who was jailed for taking part in a Palestine action protest in Glasgow where they occupied an arms factory. And he disputes that there was any panic in the workforce in the factory when they come in the next day to find this lot had occupied it. Aye. But this is to do with the outlawing of the Palestinian Action Group. As you know, we spoke about it yesterday. Now, they've been dubbed a terrorist organisation for protest and direct action as part of protest. Direct action has always been part of protest. We have laws to deal with that. We don't have to turn the people who take part in it into terrorists. They're no terrorists, they're protesters. They've just went from peaceful protest to direct action, but it's still protest. And protest is legal. And we have civil law and criminal law to deal with anything that these protesters do, whether it be daub paint on the side of airplanes or to occupy and damage arms factories. That's criminal damage. The other one is graffiti. We can deal with these things in civil law. What's happening here is the Israel lobby is putting pressure on their bought and paid for Prime Minister to try and deflect away from Palestinian protests taking place here in the UK. Because the government knows they're on the wrong side of this here. They know that 76% of us support a Palestinian state and are opposed to this genocide being carried out by Israel. But Starmer's voting paid for. So he's going to put down people who he's calling dissidents and terrorists when they know they're 76% of fucking population. We can all see it's genocide. We can all see the war crimes. Starmer refuses to even call it fucking war crimes or genocide. In fact, he refuses to call out Israel at all. And when they do call out Israel, we find out 24 hours later it's been rearranged as what Israel told them they could say. Fucking. But anyhow, there goes democracy. And by the way, when we talk about there goes democracy, Starmer's unilaterally decided yesterday at NATO that he's going to buy US B-52 bombers. Where was the parliamentary vote on whether we should increase the size of the nuclear arsenal that we hold? Starmer's acting like fucking Trump. Executive order, executive order, executive order. Fuck the people who voted for us and fuck the parliament that said it scrutinises. No real. Democracy is dead. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much. Lemon character bowing his head well, spreading hearts with his arms. Thank you. I'll get a print out later on the day. I'll show you it tomorrow morning. As I set about finding the charities, I'm going to Say about finding the food banks in Middle Lothian that the money will go to. Okay. Right, so that was a national. What's the I got for us today? Let's have a look. Stop sharing that one. We'll get the eye up. The eye has Starmer's universal decision to buy US nuclear towing airplanes. UK buy jets with nuclear weapons to create deterrent from air and sea. According to this rag, we've already spent the money. We've already bought these jets. I don't remember seeing anything about that. I don't remember hearing anything about that. I don't remember voting Parliament for it. So what's this? UK buys jets with nuclear weapons to create deterrent from air and sea. The word buys is very specific. It doesn't say UK is buying. It says buys. Now, I thought Starmer just decided universally yesterday he was going to fucking tell NATO and us that he was buying B-52 bombers to carry nuclear warheads. According to this rag, we've already bought them. That's interesting. That is interesting. Let me look into that. Because according to the I newspaper, they've already spent the money. Right. I'm going to do the I. Next up, we'll get the Metro. The Metro telling us that the Metro has Trump drops F-bomb. Days after his planes blast nuclear sites, Trump drops F-bomb. No doubt you've all seen the video, folks. Donald Trump announced a false ceasefire between Israel and Iran without even consulting either country. Now you fucking talk to Iran. So while he's tweeting in the middle of the fucking night that that's it, the game's a bogey, it's all over, ceasefire, Iran and Israel were still going at each other. Trump finds out the next day that Israel had carried out his biggest bombing raid to time and he went fucking mental. Says he wasn't happy with Israel, wasn't happy with Iran. But he putting the one rocket that came from Iran down to a mistake, whereas he didn't half give fucking Israel a time. Does it mean anything? Not a fucking thing. As Professor Norman Chomsky said, the US and Israel are carrying out a genocide in Gaza. It's deliberate. And Trump's part of it. Starmer's part of it. They're complicit, folks. And say, Professor Chomsky gave a wee speech on it the other day and he was asked about these things. I said, fuck, what are you talking about? We were talking about Iran. He said, hold on a minute. No, this is America that's doing these things. When it came to Iran saying that Israel has to be wiped off the face of the map, Professor Chomsky corrected him and said, no, what they're saying is Israel needs to be wiped off the face of the map. No, what he said was, no, that's not what Iran said. What Iran said was Israel needs to fucking integrate with the rest of the Middle East rather than try and dominate and overtake the rest of the Middle East. Because remember, Israel is a colonial aggressor. What's happening in Gaza and the West Bank is colonialism. Settler colonialism. The sort of thing we've had going on here in Scotland for 300 fucking years. Because they control our immigration. So, they decide who comes to Scotland. They in Westminster decides who comes to Scotland. And the reason why they do that, folks, to make this quite clear to people who don't understand this, If we need more people in our workforce, we need more people in our society, we have no choice but to get them from England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And that's what we call colonial settlers. We have no choice but to let the coloniser come in and settle because they control our immigration. And that's the reason why Scotland's population is only 5.4 million instead of growing at the same pace as England's population. Because when the Treaty of Union came into place, there was 2.5 million Scots and there was 10 million English. There's 55 million of them now. There's only 5.5 million at 5.4 million years. That's because they control our immigration. They can bring in the population they need. We can't. Anyway, Trump and the F word. But Israel is a colonising state, and it is colonising Gaza, and it is colonising the West Bank, and it's pushing the indigenous people out. And I say, when Professor Kongshi was asked about this yesterday, about Iran wanting to wipe Israel off the face of the map and put them straight, he says, no, what's actually happening here is Iran says the Israelis have to integrate. The Israelis are the ones that are committing Gaza, committing a genocide, and they're the ones who are wiping somebody off the map, the Palestinians. Right, so mental. But Trump's no pleased. It's a game. Trump, Starmer, Macron, the idiot in Germany, and Netanyahu, they're all in it together. They're all in it together. And the Palestinians will be wiped out. The land will be taken and their assets and resources will be fucking stolen. At the rate we're going at. And the warning that we're all headed for World War III. That's only if we allow them, folks. But Starmer's acting like a dictator. Trump's acting like a dictator. Netanyahu is a fucking genocidal dictator who would end the hold on to power. And apparently the Dutch have got fucking nutters and they charge there and all. Right. That was a metro. I think next up's Iran, and I don't put Iran up. What's their answer go? Donald snaps over ceasefire. Chaos. Trump drops F-bomb. Well, you know what, folks? Trump drops F-bomb. Trump announced a ceasefire that he hadn't negotiated. Just fucking made it up. He just fucking made it up. Put a tweet out overnight and expected people to be able to fucking tell them. Wow. If that's no a sign that somebody's fucking deluded, then what is? What is a sign that this guy is in cognitive decline? He conducts foreign policy and combat by tweet, for fuck's sake. Or his version of tweet. Through social. Fucking no real. Okay. At least it'd be easy to anticipate what he's going to do because he fucking gives you a warning by his fucking social media. You know? Nuts. Absolutely fucking nuts. Right, last one up this morning is the Star, so let's see what the Stars go for today, shall we? And the Star has. It's banging the war drum and all, folks. Middle East crisis, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Bomb blast at Iran and Israel. Yeah, it's just an act, folks. Donald wants the real estate that is Gaza. He wants to build his paradise by the Med. So the Palestinians must go. Israel wants the West Bank as well. And to ensure they get it, they've taken bits of Syria behind the fucking West Bank. And they're going to squeeze into the kill them all. Fucking no real. What a wonderful world we're living at this point in time. We've got 11 million people living in poverty and a population of about 76 million. And we've got a Prime Minister that's spending fucking loads propping up a war in Eastern Europe, propping up a genocidal regime in the Middle East. He's cutting benefits for the least of us, going to drive 250,000 more people into relative poverty, and he's taking that money and he's buying guns and telling us it's a dangerous world, get ready to go fight. Well, him and his family will be fucking safe. Fuck him. And I mean that. We cannot let him behave like this, folks. And it takes truth tellers like us to make it clear what this guy is. Starmer's a liar, a fascist, warmonger, war criminal. And I keep hearing people who've not done a year in office yet, I'll tell you when I've done a year in office. Their year in office is 9 days away. They've done nothing. Fuck all. Even the Workers' Rights Bill was a fucking laugh. Gave us back some of the rights we already had. Couldn't they make it fucking up? So what have they achieved in their first year of office, Labour? Another 500,000 people in poverty. Another 3 million pensioners that won't get their winter fuel payment. They've announced some extra food, free meal for kids at school. Heard that? And they introduced an austerity spending review to cover the 5-year term of Parliament. And I mean austerity, when you look at the figures in that spending review, the annual increases are something that to budgets are less than fucking 3 or 4% of what the inflation rate's at. So if you take the education budget down there for the next 4 years, it will increase each year by 0.4%. Inflation's at fucking 3% rising. And that's if you go with the CPI. If you go with the RPI, it's fucking higher. That's what austerity is called. That's where budgets don't increase at the same speed as costs. So we've got an austerity budget, austerity spending review for the next 5 years. Starmer's fucking people into poverty and spending big bucks on guns, folks. That's the reality. Right, that's it for the day. These programmes seem to be stretching out a wee bit. I want to get it back under control and back into 30 minutes, but thanks very much for watching again at such high numbers. Thanks very much for any donations that were taken today, and any I missed, I'm sorry. Thanks to the moderators for moderating. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you all tomorrow morning to do it again. Boy, there's some bollocks in the papers. Bye now.